Okay, you're good.
Well, welcome everyone. We're glad that you're joining us here today for our tiny training series. The time's now 1:30, so we're going to jump right into today's training with a local certified insurance counselor. This training is provided to you today by Montana Child Care Business Connect, and this project is funded in whole under a contract with the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. The statements herein do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the department. A little bit about Montana Child Care Business Connect. We launched in 2022 with a purpose to support communities, entrepreneurs with the business elements of starting, owning, and operating childcare programs in the state of Montana, with a goal of increasing childcare slots available to families across the state of Montana. We do this through a 5-pronged approach: training, technical assistance, mentorship, community capacity building, and we have an excellent web resource hub. So we'd like to take just a little bit of time this time to introduce you to our team. Our team at Montana Child Care Business Connect starts with Rhonda Schwenke. Rhonda is our leader and program director. Next, we have Jason Nitschke. Jason is on the call with us today. He's our senior child care business advisor. He does the business and technical assistance and advising for all of our child care programs in the state. Shelby Whalen is our community navigator, bringing communities together across the state to work on child care capacity solutions. Next, we have Haida Bordnovo, and Haida is our communications and outreach coordinator. She's the superstar that puts our web resource hub together. I'm Kendra Edlin. I'm a child care business advisor. I like to bring trainings and offer technical assistance to all the child care providers across our state. Alex Dubois works with Shelby in our community capacity cohort systems. And then we've got Richard Heistelman. Richard is the man who keeps us all together and on track as the program coordinator. We're a small but mighty team, proud to support you and the work you are doing in the early childhood education ecosystem. I'd like to start today with a huge and sincere thank you for the work that you guys do. It's important to the state, and we are very grateful you do it. All right, well, what are Tiny Trainings? The Tiny Training series are 30-minute webinars that we offer every other Thursday from 1:30 to 2 p.m. because this is nap time for most programs. By attending 4 of our trainings in this series, you can earn 2 hours of ECP credits. But of course, we encourage you to take advantage of all 6 of our trainings in this series. So we can give you credit. Please make sure that you follow the instructions in the chat so that we can get you and your business your ECP credits. Additionally, we ask that you please fill out the survey at the end of the program. The goal for this series of trainings is to increase your engagement with subject matter experts that can help you with your small businesses. Today, we're specifically looking at our insurance partners. You're encouraged to think of questions right now, because we will want you to ask, to be thinking of some questions that you can ask our speaker today. Chances are, if you're thinking of it, someone else in the group is thinking of it too. So it is my sincere pleasure to introduce you to today's subject matter expert. Please welcome Sean Bloomquist. Sean is a certified insurance counselor. He works as a sales executive for business insurance at Marsh McClenahan Agency. Sean has a Bachelor of Arts from Carroll College. He has over 4 years experience working with First Payne West, who's now merged and become Marsh McClenahan Agency. Sean is also a board member and the treasurer for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Montana, and he serves in our great city of Helena on the Saints Carroll College Athletic Board. Please join me today to welcome Sean. We're happy you can join us. Tell us a little bit about how insurance can work for our child care providers.
Yeah, thanks so
Welcome,
much,
Sean.
Kendra and Jason. Thank you guys for having me. Basically, what we do from a high end or a 10,000 foot view is really work with business owners and kind of really determining what risk is. Obviously, from a definition, it's the chance of loss or gain, right? Well, most often we're working with the loss side and what that might look like if they have something happen. So we partner with business owners here throughout Montana, but really throughout the Northwest and country and some of us globally. So I'm excited to be here and excited to answer some questions.
Cool. Well, let's start out with putting it out there for the group. Jason's gonna mine our chat for us today. So Jason, you just pop in if there are questions that pop up. You guys can take yourselves off mute anytime and ask a question. But I will get things started with our first question because there's nothing worse than that first awkward silence. So it is time to talk insurance. And we do want to start today with a question for Sean. Sean, why should a childcare provider have business insurance? Does a standard homeowner's insurance policy cover what the provider, does it cover a provider that has an in-home daycare?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think this is probably one that should get asked more often. Home-based daycares typically are not covered by a standard homeowners insurance policy. There are some carriers and it's becoming less and less that will add on an endorsement or sometimes referred to as a rider that will include some child care providers at home. Again, is I think the main one that will do that is Safeco. That is kind of limited to based on how many kids are under your care. It's going to depend on the hours of operation and a number of other things. But truly, child care providers should probably look at a business insurance policy outside of just a homeowners rider as well. It's just a much broader policy and really fits for more of their need.
Okay, good. What types of coverage should a child care provider consider?
It's a really good question. So if you look at a business owner's policy, it typically starts off with what's called general liability coverage, and that really is like slip, trip, and fall insurance, if you will. Essentially, if you're taking care of children, they kind of tend to get injured easily. So that's kind of the standard coverage, right? And then any property insurance, if you're going to use the business or use property, it's something that you're going to want to cover. Professional liability insurance, and we'll touch on that with errors and omissions, or also known as errors and omissions, I believe later. A coverage that they should look at carrying. Commercial auto, right? If we're transporting any children, even if you have staff members that are driving children in a personal vehicle, will want commercial auto or non-owned or hired auto liability coverage. Depending on which state, corporal punishment liability, that's basically if you're held responsible for or accused of striking a child. Oftentimes you keep in mind, you're in the business, but you have a really good heart, right? And you're trying to help out for tiny humans and children. Oftentimes it's not that you're liable for striking a child, it's the opportunity to defend you in these suits. So it's more often than not, these are more of like defense costs associated with an allegation such as that. Abuse and molestation liability coverage. And then another one would be something that goes over your liability, be commercial umbrella that you should contemplate, and workers' compensation if you have employees. That's a general gist of some coverages that they should consider.
Yeah, so all of our providers have workers' comp because to be licensed, that's something that they have to provide and things like that. But you did mention a couple that I'm pretty sure a lot of our providers don't think of. And those two that are really out there is that corporal punishment one. Is the expense for something like that high?
It's underwritten specifically. So to say like what the cost would be, it'll vary, depending on each individual basis, but it really isn't that high. And I think if you get with a provider that works with childcare, it's typically something that they'll build in, or they might have a separate for the professional liability and the corporal punishment. It just depends on the carrier, but when you get into the insurance marketplace, the more specialization with a carrier that does this like every day, the better coverage you're going to get, that you're going to find, oh, this is a much more cost effective way of doing business.
And that's
And
really great to know.
another thing I'll mention too is the Department of Health and Human Services, when you're submitting that insurance verification form online, it's only going to ask for your public liability, which is going to be your general liability, or your fire insurance, which is going to be your property coverage. And they want a certificate of that. But I really think those two coverages are not enough, especially in again, it's not that you're liable. Sometimes more often than not, it's the cost to defend that we're not liable.
Exactly. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think a lot of times we think, well, the state says do this, and so we're good, we're fine. And you'll know as a expert in the field that covering all your bases is really important to consider. And I know that those two specific ones were really interesting to me. I have another question here. Let's see. What's an underwriter looking for when they're reviewing for my business coverage?
Yeah, that's also a good question. I'll backtrack really quick. I think important to know, obviously with a lot of providers, they don't see they don't always feel like they're a business person, right? They're really in the business to look out for children. So I think, like, when you go through some of these coverages or type of coverages, this is really an opportunity to partner with an agency that's going to have your best interest in mind. I think if you go through, like, say you want to go quote online, you click a few buttons and you get a certificate that's gonna meet those criteria that the state's asking. You're really kind of doing yourself a disservice. There are just so many things to look out for, and so many different ways insurance can really help you, or even other ways to manage your risk outside of insurance. So I do really encourage partnering with an agency or a broker for some of those, just because your business is to take care of children. It's not to know all these coverages and all these other things. So just kind of wanted to backtrack. It's just something that I feel like is really important. And I know it feels so transactional sometimes, but I promise if you work with the right people, there's a lot of benefit to it. Underwriters, so what they're looking at, and it really, I think it's becoming more and more strict. And you're probably seeing it on your personal stuff, your personal auto, your homeowners, and everything's going up. And really, that's a testament to what they're calling is a hard market right now. Before, underwriters were looking at things and I think kind of just setting things up on automatic renewal, and hey, they were getting their little percentage, but it didn't, as long as they kind of gained that every year, it was good. Well, right now everything's kind of scrutinized, and on the back end, reinsurance carriers that are working with these insurance carriers are really diving deep into businesses, and now they're wanting to know a lot more information on licensing. Do you have a safety manual, and do you have a handbook? And by the way, I can send you, Kendra, after this presentation, a couple of those just so you can share with the group. But they're going to want to know your business bio. Is this a new venture for you? They're going to be a little hesitant if it's a new venture, because they're going to say, what do you know really about childcare? Copies of all your contracts, most recent inspection report from the state. And if there was anything on that, they want an explanation of what you're doing to correct it. Copy your current policy. They're going to want corner to corner photos, sometimes videos of exterior, interior, your loss history, or also referred to as loss runs in insurance. That's basically looking at, have you had any losses? It'll kind of give a narrative of what that looks like, how much that cost. Sometimes financial statements, resumes and bios for directors, your training schedules and logs, certifications. So as you can kind of see, like they're really, really looking at you individually, and they're wanting to make sure that you're a good risk for them, and then also that they can partner with you to kind of enhance any of those things if you're lacking.
And knowing that they're looking at all of those things, I can tell Jason's going to pop in and add something here. But knowing all of that, that's exactly why we bring to you the idea of the bail team, is that the insurance person is a partner for you, because the more you're working with someone who knows you and your business, you're going to be better off than clicking those clicks, like Sean said, on an application that's just on the internet. The more you can be relational with your bail team, the better it's going to be for you.
When underwriters now more than ever are challenging us as agents to know you, and I promise you, if you're looking at a child care policy and they don't feel like the agent knows the insured, and you're kind of answering a very like general basis, and you're kind of coming up with maybe these answers off the top of your head. They'll know. I mean, they're very strict. They want to know that you know your client, and they want to know that you have the best interest of your client moving forward, or they may just not even be willing to offer a quote.
Yeah, that's great to know. All right. What's the typical type of claim that you see in the childcare space every day?
That's a really good question. Typically abuse. So you're going to have, and then again, it's more of allegations of abuse. So you're going to have physical, mental, sexual. Those are probably the top ones that probably are the scariest, right? Any bodily injury claims, your slip, trip, falls, activity related injuries. More and more prevalent, and especially with larger risks is cyber. A lot of childcare providers do have sensitive information that they're keeping, so that is something that unfortunately is becoming more of a risk and what we're seeing claims in. Failure to supervise claims, so that's going to follow more on your professional, your E&O liability. Food related claims, food poisoning, allergic reactions, employment practices claims, which would be like I hired someone and a year later I had to terminate them. Well, they came back and said, I didn't have a right to terminate them, and we have a wrongful termination suit. That can even be sexual harassment or discrimination. And then employee injuries do happen too in childcare, and that'd be like more of a work comp injury.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you're working with little ones. The amount of extras that you have to think about is pretty grand out there. Okay. So this one is coming up a lot for our childcare providers, and it is something that we've had several conversations across the industry. We've been trying to kind of bring this to light a little bit more for our providers, and that's, hey, my facility's meeting the state requirements, but why is the insurance carriers that I speak with seeming like they want more and more and more? And if you could talk on that a little bit, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and this one's frustrating probably for all of us, right? So you're gonna have your staff to child ratios and what that looks like, and you think you're doing a great job because this is what, and you more often than not are doing a great job, right? This is what the state recommends. I'm more than meeting that, but the insurance company is saying I need to be even stricter than that. And really what that comes down to is actuarial science and actuaries on the back end saying, what we've found to be effective is this staff to child ratio. Whether the state says they want, something else, this is what's effective. And really it's data driven, right? So what they're looking at is historical data that says, hey, say a 1 to 2 staff child ratio makes more sense. This is the data that we have to suggest that. And we know we can control our claims when the staff to ratio or staff to child ratio is X. So as frustrating as it is for all of us, it's really determined by data, and it's really an insurance company trying to not only control their risk, but control yours as well.
And again, this is why we encourage all of our providers here in the state of Montana to have relationships with their insurance carriers. It's hard to change that actuary type data that's out there, correct, Sean?
Yeah, and we can't, right? So, there's a reason for it. And right now, I would say like with your property losses and everything else that's happening in catastrophic loss, you'll see these actuaries have been wrong, and they haven't been that wrong like this in the past, right? And some of that is unprecedented. Some of this has changed, but right with this data, they have a pretty good idea of saying, hey, this staff to child ratio is going to make sense. It's not only going to make sense in today's landscape, but it's going to make sense, a year from now. And they really have good data to support it. Whether we agree with that or not, I'm with you.
Right.
We're probably like, hey, that's a little too strict. But you'll see each individual carrier might even have their own ratio. And again, that's all based on the data that carrier has.
Mm-hmm. When I was little, my dad used to tell me the only mind you can't change is an actuary's.
Yeah, if you've met them, you can't.
But it is one of those things that we really want to encourage you guys, especially to not be disheartened by it. But the more that we can help provide data that's going to change that down the road, the better off our businesses here in Montana are going to be. this is the time where I want to open up for you guys to ask specific questions. And I'm really going to challenge you guys to come off mute here and to ask our subject matter expert the questions that are dying inside of you about insurance. And it can be specific to what you're currently doing or what you've got going on in your childcare. But we'd like to hear from you guys today. So please ask Sean a question.
I can expand too while people are thinking.
Okay.
We talked about the staff to child ratio just a second ago. I think too it's important when you're business planning, especially if you're starting a business childcare. You might say, well, this is how much staff I need to support my current child load. Well, the reality is work with your insurance provider or at least a carrier so you have a good figure, because it's going to help you plan for your business. It might, if you say, well, I need 4 staff by the end of 2024, it might, according to the state, that might be a different number than what the insurance carrier is saying too. So just partner with your agent. I just can't encourage that enough.
Okay, cool. So the Creative Playhouse does come up with a really great question. She specifically asked, she says, I've had my insurance through the same company for 25 plus years, but the agent changes every month or so. Can you speak a little bit to that and why going through a broker might be a better option?
Yeah, I would say the terms are pretty universal, agent and broker. An agent is typically more someone that is going to work with one specific carrier or captive agency. Think of that as like a Farmers or State Farm. And what we do at PayneWest formerly PayneWest, excuse me, is really what we work with a number of different carriers to try and make sure that we provide the best option. But I will say, I understand the frustration. I think with, saying someone changes every 6 months, I will say we've probably seen more turnover in our industry, and we will continue to see that in the next 5 years, probably than, you're seeing it right now with accountants as well. It's definitely a problem. I would say it's part of that. It's also probably a service model problem as well. And whether that's our agency or another agency that you're working with, super frustrating when you get probably a different answer every 6 months. So I would say if you find a good one, hold on to them.
Tell them they don't get a leave.
Yes, yeah. And if they can assign, I do think there's a service model problem in the industry. And I think that right now it's one of those issues I can relate with. And I totally understand. I think it's going to continue to be challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kendra, while we're waiting for our next question from the group, I have one for you, Sean. I think it's the elephant in the room that most people are thinking and not asking, which is insurance premiums in this industry appear to be increasing year over year at significantly higher rates than in other industries, including our home policies and personal lines. Do you have any insight as to why insurance premiums are increasing at very high rates, in some cases 30, 40, 50, and I've even seen 200% year over year increases? Any insights there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say multidimensional. I'll start with saying claims in the industry in general are on the rise. More so, significant losses in the child care space has kind of created an uphill battle. And the performance of the industry, even with those that aren't having claims, are seeing increases, and you're probably relating to those. So when you have a claim, it's taking longer. There's more supporting documentation to demonstrate that, to prevent the issue from happening again, or if it's going to trial, that, those are taking a significant amount of time to go. And basically what we've kind of talked about is there's nuclear verdicts, meaning that these jurors don't really understand the value of a dollar anymore. So you'll see some of these cases that will be for millions and millions of dollars. And really that's kind of part of litigation and what the litigation strategy is doing. Something that we haven't seen in the past that we're seeing now is essentially funding for these kind of cases, and it's private equity funding insurance claims, right? And so they're saying, well, hey, we're going to front your insurance or your attorney costs, knowing that we're going to have a portion of the payout if they're found guilty. So a lot of different things impacting the market. I would also say part of it is carriers reducing their capacity or their willingness to write business. So now all of a sudden, we had say 10 carriers before that would work in childcare. Now we have 3. And those 3 are saying, and that's just an example, but say those 3 are saying, well, hey, we're going to control and dictate the terms of this. It maybe it's been historically underpriced in their opinion. And I was saying, well, we know that we're the only 3 and we're going to price it, the way we feel to price it. So I would say the space is more limited than ever from a carrier perspective. And that's also controlling some of these increases.
Yeah.
But you'll also hear, you're going to hear inflation that's in doing that. Corporate governance is going to increase, what's going on. And some of it, I'm just as frustrated as probably everyone else with it, frankly.
Yeah. You're not the actuary who's setting the price.
No, and some of these losses are just, I don't know, unless they're going to do like a statutory cap at some point on some of the stuff. I don't know that it's going to continue to get better. I think in 2024, you'll see things start to level a little bit, but I do not think that it'll go back to the way it was, say, even 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's great to know. Okay, before I move along, I really want to give an opportunity if there's any other burning questions out there. Anyone else want to come off mute and ask Sean a specific question?
This is Christy. I am curious. I know that there are people in the state already working on this, but some providers have found out that they're not covered for children with special needs. And I'm just wondering if you know about that and what you think will happen, and if you have recommendations for different companies, because it's Markel that is the issue, and that's what a lot of people are using.
Yeah, and Markel historically, because that's a really good question. Markel historically has been one of the better providers in this. So it's one of those, now you're getting back to kind of the staff to child ratio, and what they're finding is obviously special needs a higher, needs basically, it needs a much different ratio than another child. So what I would recommend is working again with a specialty carrier that really like has a child care program. To name off a few, insurance carriers probably wouldn't do everyone a service of that. I think it's more of like identifying what endorsements and what exclusions are on that. And again, that's partnering with your agent saying, hey, if I have special needs, this is really what I need. I think those kind of conversations, if they're happening on the front end, will prevent like all of a sudden a carrier saying, hey, well, we don't cover that. Because if they know on the front end, there should be no problem for them covering it.
Okay,
that's
thank
great.
you.
Gosh, thanks so much, Sean, for all of your great insight. For those of you who want more information, please do not hesitate to reach out to Sean. He's happy to get you in touch with everyone or anyone who can help you. And he is here willing and able to be a partner with you. So we want to make sure that we put that out there for everyone. For more on building your bail team, don't forget to use our web resource hub. We have some great information out there that will help you guys understand a little bit more about building this great bail team. In addition, we want to thank you so much for being on today, and it is critical that you do. Please take the time to fill out our survey. Snap a picture of our QR code here or follow the link. For ECP credits, it's really important for us, and it's good for us to know so that we can do better every time that we come and bring you great trainings. So with that, I want to say a great thank you to Sean, and thank you, Jason, for being on today. And thanks for everyone for participating. And we will see you next time on the 16th in 2 weeks, when we discuss using a lawyer and legal services for our bail team. Bye.
Thank you.